This is Face to Face with the co-founders of the National Association of Expert Advisors, Jay Kinder and Michael Reese.
We believe that we can change the real estate industry. There is a better way to sell real estate.
Your success is ultimately a sum of the decisions that you make.
And they're really developing a process, a set of guidelines, a set of procedures.
They're also best-selling authors.
Here today to discuss the issue is Jay Kinder and Michael Reese.
Welcome to Face to Face. I'm Jay Kinder.
Michael Reese.
And today we're going to talk about how to become the Incredible Hulk in a puddle. You're probably wondering, what the heck does that mean? So this is something we learned a long time ago. Actually, we learned this from Dan Kennedy. And I think probably evidence of that we learned in our own real estate businesses as we built them over the years. But it's a lot easier to become the Incredible Hulk in a puddle than it is to try to take over an entire marketplace. So
Spit in the ocean.
Spit in the ocean, right? And I think a lot of I think what a lot of real estate agents do is, you know, they'll take a listing anywhere, right? Like, doesn't matter what city it's in, what zip code it's in, doesn't matter where it's at. There's no real focus on building your business and becoming the expert of a particular area in town. And
right.
I think I was probably fortunate, being in Lawton, there wasn't another area for me to work in. So becoming the Incredible Hulk in the puddle was not necessarily as strategic because
right.
it was just something that happened by
You're in a puddle.
I was just in a puddle. I just happened to be in a puddle, and it worked that way. But you did have a choice, and you chose to leave the puddle you were in.
Yep.
And you might talk a little bit about that, because I think that's another thing strategically that's important to consider as we go deeper into this topic of becoming a neighborhood expert.
Yeah.
Talking about that.
Yeah, I think
decision.
My decision, I moved from a place, the Colony, which was, long story short, just hired a statistician, and he basically said, do you know where Denton is, or you know where Frisco is? Because if you stay where you're at, you're going to go broke. And I think he was being a little bit, it's not true. I mean, I don't think I would have went broke, but I do think he was basically implying that there was a lot better areas. So I moved to Frisco, and as I look back, the key word here is. This is my key word, and this is because conceptually this applies to any business.
Right.
And so as I look at, becoming the Incredible Hulk in the puddle, I like to talk about it as we talk about the future, and to me the key word of the future is the audience.
Right.
The audience. Who is your audience? It's hard. People's attention is not free.
Right.
And so and the more deliberate you can be and focus with your efforts, you can basically you can leverage best practices that's proven. Whether you obey or disobey, there is always a point of leverage. The law of minimum effort, as Timothy Ferriss would say. And so,
one of my favorite laws, by the way.
Right, it is. And so, if you could do two activities in two different places, or it was proven by doing it in a more dense area, you would actually get a higher return, and that higher return would be. Because of the force multiplier effect. I know I experienced this after you, but I remember a guy telling me real estate was slow. I swear, dude, this happened. I was at a mailbox getting some papers. It was open house, hamburger man, like maybe some Mardi Gras beads, there's the stupid stuff they put in your mailbox.
Right.
I pulled all the stuff out. Someone said it was really slow, and you had said to me, You said to me, and you don't remember this, you said, man, people are going to tell you it's slow in this. I moved out of that building. I'm over here in this because I don't even want to hear the naysayers. And I was like, you're a naysayer, right? Like, I was like, you're one of those people that thinks it's slow. I heard about your type, right? And because you had planted that in me, I didn't know any different. And then they were all around the mailbox talking about slow.
Right.
And
was this like one of those big mailboxes at Keller Williams or something, with all the agents' boxes and everything?
Yeah, that's exactly.
And they were standing around
talking
about
how the 2 minutes
slow.
they stop by the office.
Right.
That's it. And then they go to happy hours and eat hamburgers.
Right.
And so I was like, I get it. And so you had already distilled into me kind of a more of a marketer's mindset approach to real estate. I took ownership that hell yeah, it's slow. I didn't do nothing today. Right. And so I just had a different mind shift. So for me, I started in a neighborhood around my dad's house, and every day I started. It was Stewart's Peninsula 1 and 2. I would door hang here, then door hang here, and that was, I'll never forget sitting outside of Sheila, who now is one of our clients. She moved and then got into real estate and started following us. Sheila Cruzman, sitting out in front of her house. It was the biggest house that I would have ever went on a listing appointment, ever dreamed of. It just looked huge.
Right.
And I remember they offered me a beer when I came in, and they were just cool people.
Right.
And I was like, man, I can do this. Just because they got a huge house.
I love real estate.
I love it, right.
Yeah.
And so I got assigned there, and that gave me confidence when I went to Juniper Circle. Dude, these are all on the map, right around the corner. And because I had that big one, I got that one. From that one, I got the one across the street. And then I remember, dude, I had like 6, and people were like, my door hanger started working better.
Right.
My signs, every thing working better.
Yeah.
And then people started saying, man, I see your sign everywhere, which you had already been experiencing. But that was, I had to start in a small area. And what happens was I built an audience. You can't build an audience with, it would be like, how would you build an audience if you had a radio show that was 30 minutes, but you were on a random channel that no one ever knew where to find you?
Right.
Like you couldn't build an audience because they couldn't tune in.
Or the listeners were tuning in from all over the place.
All over the place, yeah.
Spread out everywhere.
And the reason I use that example is because, people would randomly see your stuff versus, intentionally starting to see your stuff. And I think that's where, you want to kind of layer in a plan, because what happens is it and I'm not trying to take, I'm just...
No, dude, this is great. I love it.
What happens
in
is...
15 years, you've never shared that story, by the way.
Yeah.
So thank you for that. It's such a reminder of exactly what I experienced in my business. And that confidence level going up, I remember that. It's a great feeling.
It is a great feeling.
When you start taking over a neighborhood, and in every conversation, you're talking about the last one. You just took this listing, and then it goes under contract. And I had those scenarios where I listed one that had an appraisal that was $30,000 low when the market was going up.
Right.
I listed it and sold it for $30,000 more. I'm having that conversation with the lady a street over.
Yes.
Winning that listing away from my number one competitor. That momentum you get when you start taking over a neighborhood is just, it gives you all the confidence in the world you can do anything.
Absolutely.
Right?
And what I did on the back of my flyers is I put all the other homes. So what happens was my buyers started being centralized, so I didn't have to drive buyers far around. And then my houses, they would call on the one that was 169, which was Juniper Circle. I just remember this. And Sheila's was 230, and it wasn't big enough, and they wanted something bigger. And
Have you seen this one?
Yeah, and then what happened, dude, I remember all this stuff, dude. And then a lady who worked at the principal in Plano, I listed her house, which was a corner lot. So when you drove down this one street, you saw hers. You looked 2 doors down, you saw Juniper Circle, which was like a 10-house cul-de-sac. Right. I had 2. Then you went by Sheila's. I started taking over that street. And then it just kind of compounded from there. And to me, so when I walked into an appointment after the first one sold, I could reference that story. I could reference a buyer that I already knew. Proof. I could prove. Yeah. Or I had someone who was, or they saw my open house and I could tell, hey, I just met like 4 people. Or I could go to a FSBO, and my confidence was, because at the time, I don't remember the number, but it was something like, in order for me to be the number 1 agent in that neighborhood, I had to sell 5 homes in that neighborhood to be able to say I sold more homes.
Right.
So I told this story last week. I became the number 1 agent in the city of McKinney in an entire calendar year for luxury property.
Would you sell 2 houses?
No, what I did was I sold. So I used to be able to say I participated in over half of the transactions in the luxury market in McKinney, which was defined by homes over 417,000, and there was 11 sales, and I participated in 6 of them. Right. So
using statistics for
exactly.
Right. But that's what and so it's funny because. Man, I love that story. And as we continue this conversation, this is really about becoming the neighborhood expert. So, the strategy that we have around partner and the direction that we're going, which we'll talk about some more. But there's definitely actionable things that you can do to dominate a territory. Like, there was never a for sale by owner in my neighborhood. It was Pecan Valley, right? So that was the one that I dominated to almost 50. It was 48% market share in the neighborhood. You couldn't. But it's these are marketing principles. So what I want people to understand too is this strategy. a lot of it is about the confidence it builds in you, the stories, how you're able to take a buyer that calls in on one property, tell them about another, because you know every damn house in the neighborhood, because you have half of them listed.
Right, and the buyer, you have authority with the buyer because they saw your signs.
Right.
That's true as well. I never thought about that.
Right. So it becomes easier to make double in those deals, and when you make a seller homeless and they go buy again, so like it gets. This is really like the epitome of going from doing 20 deals or 30 transactions with all off repeat referral and jump into 80 transactions. You know what I'm saying? Like this is where I went from 110 transactions to 233. I couldn't. It was like a water faucet was turned on. I couldn't turn it off.
Right.
You start taking so many listings that the listings are getting you listings, and the listings you took are getting you more listings, and the buyers are keep calling, and you're like, what do I do?
Right.
Like you're so busy at a certain point that you start building a team.
Right.
So that was the experience that I had as well. But in Pecan Valley, the story that I always tell is the reason I was able to get so much market share in there, and I had a great competitor, top 10 RE/MAX agent in the world, but the reason I was able to get so much market share there was because, number one, I have a question. Did you have your Hummer wrapped during that time period? The wrapped Hummer? Do you remember?
I did not, but I got it wrapped. It financed me even being able to own a Hummer and get it wrapped.
Right.
And I did. So the reason I know is I lived in James Circle when I got the Hummer and got it wrapped.
Right.
And I was only in James Circle until 2004, the end of 2004. So it was my first 2 years. It was probably at the end of year one, about 18 months I got the Hummer. So it was somewhere in there within 6 months.
Right. I remember pulling to the lake at Lake Texoma, and you had, I had bought the Hummer too,
Right.
but I hadn't wrapped it.
Right.
And yours was wrapped, beautiful Michael Reese home selling team. I was like, what the hell has he done? This is amazing. I remember pulling up. I was so jealous. But it's fun. It's funny, but like really, it was brilliant, right? Like that strategy.
People still say they see it today.
Right. And it hasn't been wrapped in how many years?
Since 2010.
Well, it's besides the fact that you still drive the same damn Hummer.
Right.
Which is just
same car.
Amazing.
Yeah.
It's just amazing that you can keep that thing on the road that many years, actually.
Right.
I still have mine in Lawton. I haven't driven it in a long time. It caught on fire one time when we drove it. It's got a few miles on it. But that wrapped vehicle was another sign. And people do see it everywhere, right? So, like, we have a mastermind client, Michelle Trosall, that has wrapped Mini Coopers, and there's like 15 of them. Like every agent in their company has one, and they're all leased, and there's really no expense because they have a vendor that advertises on the back of it. So like I think a lot of people don't think about, oh, well, I can't do that or whatever. But the wrap vehicle, as far as the neighborhood taking over neighborhood territory, is a great strategy. And it just is. Like I had, there's a good chance that when you came by my house, you're going to see my Hummer parked in the yard. That's just as good as having a yard sign. Everybody sees it every day, anytime you drive by. And if I'm going on a listing appointment in the neighborhood, everybody sees it. If I'm driving through the neighborhood for any reason, showing a house or whatever. But what I had was those signs and this is what happens. So like understanding the psychology of sales and understanding why this works, and what you said, which is the J. Abraham principle of the multiplier effect, the compound effect of these actions of being laser focused on a neighborhood, not an entire city, and just going and randomly selling everything.
Right.
And showing any buyer and showing any house and taking any listing, is that the compound effect is what really will propel your business and take you to the next level, right?
Right.
And then it expands into other neighborhoods. You know what I'm saying? Like it doesn't just stay there. You start to be able to expand from there, right?
And it's funny because the truth is I did become the expert. I knew every house.
Right.
I knew every floor plan. I knew every builder.
You'd upgrade packages?
I knew when one was a good deal.
Right.
I would be like, oh, you ain't getting this square footage with granite. I mean, not at this price. I've never seen one like this with granite.
Right.
People they're usually have to pay for granite after. So I was in tune with what was a good deal. I could see value, and I could transfer the enthusiasm to my buyer.
Right.
Or
That's so
I
true.
could advise my client, and because I was coming from a unique, like very fulfilled place of, or maybe not fulfilled is the word, but very genuine place where
Right.
they could just feel it. Like, you really think this is
Right.
you
No,
know,
I'm telling you, this is a deal.
you ain't gonna find one like this.
And they would listen to you on the offer that you tell them to make instead of making a
Exactly.
stupid offer and having multiple offers on your listing you got to deal with.
Yeah, and
then
I
you double it.
And I could be on the phone with an expired. I could say, hey, yeah, right now in Stewart's Peninsula, between 200 to 250, the pending ratio is 11%.
Yep.
And above 300 to 400 right now, we're seeing about an 8%. We got 11.6 months of market inventory. And in my opinion, based upon what you told me is important your goal
right,
is we should probably do this versus that. I wasn't studying. I could rap like that in real time if I just bumped into you at the sidewalk because I knew.
You knew the market.
Right.
You were truthful. I mean,
I was truly
you were the expert, right?
Yeah.
And so, no pun intended here. Expert advisor. There's a reason. The market knowledge is you can't be unless you are the market expert. You can't be. What's interesting too, and we'll come back to finishing the point on the force multiplier and the marketing in Pecan Valley and that story here in a second. But what's interesting is there's quite a few people that are listening that are like, man, that are going, yeah, I remember that too, right? And they had that same experience we did. They did the same things that we're talking about now, and they now have a team of doing 100, 200, 300, 400 deals, right? And for those of you who are nodding your heads, yes, that's how I did it too, because we know that's how you did it, because there isn't another way to do it. You don't do it by randomly taking over a city. You do it by doing this strategy. We coach too many people through this to know.
Right.
There ain't an easy way to do it. If you did it some other way, you're gonna have to let us know. If you did it through REO and you got lucky and flipped that into something different or something maybe, but I've never seen anybody really consistently do that. So this is the strategy we use to help everybody grow their business. So most of you that are listening, because we have a lot of people that are at a high level listening, know that. Now look at your business model, right? Now look at your agents and look at your business model and ask why they're not successful. Think about that for a second. Why are your agents not successful? Did you teach them to do everything that you did? Well, why not? You didn't. You didn't teach them to do what we're suggesting is becoming the neighborhood expert, becoming the market expert, and taking over and dominating on the listing side, and then double-ending deals. And that's why your agents only close 1.7 deals per month to 2 deals per month, because you gave them a bunch of leads. The first thing that happens is your first buyer agent crushes it because you give them all of your buyers because you're so tired of showing houses and you got so many listings to go take, and that agent crushes it. So then you're like, shit, he's doing so good. I need another couple buyer agents. If they were all doing 4 deals, 5 deals a month, man, this is looking good, right? And then the second one doesn't get all the same opportunities as the first one, and the third one doesn't get any opportunities, and you tell them to pick up the phone and call those leads, call those leads. But did you ever do that really? Nope, you didn't. You did the strategy we're talking about. So when we look at the business model, we scratch our head, and go, why ain't this working?
Right.
It's because this is the same strategy used to be successful is not how you build and structure a team. We talk about it all the time, but it's just it's the business model that's the problem. But that's the importance of going to the expert advisor level.
Yeah, and so the thing that I think is. If I was advising my person on the team, or if you're a solo agent, I think the way that I would think differently is, and this is best. This isn't. Some of this is like when you have an open house. Where do you do it? You should do it in that neighborhood.
Right. Every time.
Every time. Every single time. When you sell a home over here, where do you mail the just listed card? That neighborhood.
Right.
Right. That's what we're saying is that. Everything you do right now, if you do a just listed sold around here, I knew a guy that in 12 months sold 77 homes in one neighborhood at an average of almost 2 times the median home sale price in the area. And he sold so many houses outside of the neighborhood that what he did was he did one big just listed, just sold card every other month plus one branded. And he had done that for like 4 years,
right? Crushing
it. And then he took a neighborhood of 2,500 homes, then went to 10,000. By the time he got to 10,000, he was #1 in the world for Keller Williams. Went to, and then he just started. You could see him on the map, just inching over, just boom, 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 boom. And then he picked the neighborhoods strategically that where he had high price points, which then gave him really higher end buyers. So he also had that force multiplier effect of growing his business by increasing his average commission, doing typically the same amount of work that it took to sell a $300,000 house. He was selling a $500,000, which was generating a homeless buyer that was buying $700,000, which gave him a past client database of someone that was going to sell $700,000 in the future, which just propelled upon itself. So
like 4 years into that, he's
crushing
game over.
You and him in 2005 got on the plane. He was doing 900,000 in GCI. You were beating everybody. I was barely over him. Fast forward 2 years, and he got there quick.
Yeah.
2 years later, he was doing $4 million.
Crushing it.
Yeah, crushing, owning the neighborhoods.
Right.
And so that I believe.
And he wasn't doing radio, television, and some of the things that and all the mass marketing we had to do.
He was the first person that came up with the Raving Fan Club that I know. He showed us on the plane the concept. Remember?
Right.
And it was because he was trying to get all those things for people in the neighborhood.
Right.
He was literally trying to add value to the neighborhood and be when the neighborhood had a party, he gave them the margarita machine. He gave them the branded cups for the party.
Right.
He was part of the HOA. He did, he participated in everything into the neighborhood. Right. And I've seen that repeated I've seen it repeated more than other times. I've never really paid attention. I know of another time where a friend of mine did something similar. I know that it works. I believe that if I was doing it in today's age, my goal, if I had a meter, my goal would be collecting, not scanning, not augmenting, not enhancing, not buying, meaning I would have an iPad and I'd be door to door enrolling people into my market update. And my goal would be ground and pound, door knock, and get just like a mosquito, ant, pesticide college kid that's coming working for a company. And it's in my phone. I wrote it. My phone's dead, but I wrote it in my phone. I was like just brainstorming on the plane one time, and I saw it the other day, and it was like what I would do, and it was I would do blah 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 blah, and it would be trying to get a dense area of email addresses of people who were my audience.
Right.
Because once I have their email address, I can put them in Facebook into a what? Custom audience.
Right.
And now when they're in my Facebook community, I can then create.
You could create that same postcard that you set the direct mail every time you sell a house. You can create in a custom audience ad to them on Facebook.
I could do that, and I can put them in. Now I can also invite them to a private community, which is again becoming that digital
narrative.
Becoming that digital mayor,
right?
As Gary Vaynerchuk said he would do if he was in real estate. And once they were in a private Facebook group, I would then be controlling their consumption. And the positioning of me being the expert or the go-to person that knows the most about that.
And you would have to be that person. So this is important because this is where agents that built big teams are going to get taken apart. They're going to get ripped apart I've seen this with agents that we've coached that would ask questions. How do you deal with this when you have a negative? Somebody blowing you up about how you did a shitty job with their house sale because you sent your listing partner out there into that neighborhood and the whole neighborhood community on what is that neighborhood app?
Nextdoor.
On Nextdoor, they're bashing the shit out of you, and you ain't gonna get another listing in that neighborhood. You won't go. You can have 3 signs in that neighborhood and lose every opportunity you ever had because you didn't take care of somebody. So as you get bigger, the threat of not taking care of the customer becomes real, and the threat of that losing market share becomes real. Which is why, it will be agents. The agents that survive will be the ones that are doing this strategy and are one-to-one with that customer. And are taking care of them and are hanging out with them and drinking beer with them when they take the listing. It's going to be that's going to be how you defend your territory.
Yeah,
and it's funny. It's funny because actually, Chad. I was talking to Chad. He asked me who did my granite because I thought I got a heck of a deal on granite, and so I gave him the name of the person that Victor that did my granite. I think you may have given. I don't even remember where I got it. But anyways, he was good. It was cheap, and he interviewed someone from the neighborhood community page. I don't remember if there was a community page, if it was Nextdoor, or if it was just a Facebook community page, but they got a big community there in his neighborhood, right? And so he's playing them against each other, and the other guy goes from 6,000. They come from 6,000 roughly bid for granite for his whole house down to $2,900. And the guy that did it for $2,900, Victor he's out of Fort Worth, so he'd had to come a long ways to do the deal. But what the other guy was strategy was I want the job, and I want you to post in the community about me and tell everybody how wonderful I am, and anytime, any chance. So he's saying, I'm coming in. This is a Jay Abraham strategy. The guy may or may not know it, but it's what's the lifetime value of being that community expert for him, and everyone in the community.
Break even today, break the bank tomorrow.
Break even today, break the bank tomorrow. That's it. He was acquiring the first customer at break even, probably losing a little bit of money because he was going to break into a huge neighborhood community and get jobs for life.
Yeah.
And that was his strategy.
He's taking over market share.
Right. He was smart.
Yeah.
So he was willing to do it for $2,900. Right. The next one he ain't gonna have to do because people gonna be raving about him in that neighborhood. So that's it's, at least Chad will anyways, right? Because he had a hell of a deal that first one.
Right.
So like that's the whole angle and the strategy and the opportunity that we see with neighborhoods becoming the Incredible Hulk in a puddle, using today's media and the way to build a business around being the expert in a neighborhood. So anyways, that's all I got.
No, I love it, man.
I didn't come back and finish my Pecan Valley story, so let me finish that just real quick.
Yeah.
So it's just so people understand too, like really it is relationship more than anything. So like that piece of it, don't forget, it is relationship. You have to build relationships with these clients, and period. They'll be raving fans of yours or they won't. And if you don't have that, or if you piss somebody off, you're either missing an opportunity or you're at risk of losing your territory to somebody else doing a better job than you. But it's really, in the beginning, it's about reach and frequency. When somebody sees a sign and they drive by a sign and then they leave the neighborhood and they see a billboard and they go down Rogers Lane, they would see another billboard. They come back, they wouldn't see the same billboard because it was a north-facing board, but they would come back into the neighborhood, drive by that same sign again. Then I would send out one mailer once per month. Like I was touching people. They were seeing my face or hearing my voice or seeing my billboard, whatever it may be. In many cases, over 100 times in a month. They couldn't avoid it. They had to drive by the signs. And any other time they left for work, came home, any other times they left their house, they drove by maybe one sign. There's only two ways into the neighborhood, so most of these people would drive by one or two of my yard signs. Like you can't, it's very difficult for someone to not think of you first if you can build and build the number of the frequency, reach and frequency in that neighborhood. I had everyone in the neighborhood with a high level of frequency. You couldn't leave the neighborhood without seeing my billboard. You couldn't really leave the neighborhood without seeing at least my yard sign twice and seeing it twice when you came back home. And if you ever left for anything else in the day, you saw it two more times. Like you couldn't ignore it as the number one person that comes to mind. And if you're taking over anything when it comes to marketing, you want to be who they think of first. That's the goal, mind share. And that's how you do it, is more impressions, which is why focusing on the listing side of the business is the name of the game. So anyways, I just wanted to, I didn't want to let my ADHD complete the loop and finish that story, so I had to finish it with that.
No, I love it, man. And so just be thinking, I think the goal here is it is a strategy. It's a strategy that is, not randomly nailing boards together. It's how to build a foundation in your business that allows you, I believe, to, have a higher, it optimizes every part of the process, and it really does. It really is, you know what? I think it puts you in the position to start attracting. It is the formula for attracting business. And it's like, man, they're calling me now.
Right.
If you want to get into the point where people are saying, hey, I heard about you, Jay Kinder. I was wondering if you could come look at my house. This is the strategy on how you get there. The step one is you have to start by dominating an area, by becoming the true expert, by basically understanding how you're going to invest your time, your energy, your effort, your marketing dollars in a more focused area, so that you can be the beneficiary, if you will, of an actual investment. If you just sell a home here and home here and home here, you're making money.
Yeah, nobody ever saw any of that.
Yeah, and so you're not getting that benefit. So yeah, I think that's awesome.
Right on. So that's
become the neighborhood bully.
The neighborhood bully, picking on all those realtors.
Yeah.
All right, man. That's all we got for today. So appreciate you tuning in. It's always a pleasure to have you on the podcast, and we'll see you either at the top
or from the top.
Right on.
Or at the lake, or at the Bahamas, or at the
mountains,
or on the boat.
On the boat, on the sea
rig.
At
the office.
Probably at the office.
In the morning at the gym.
We'll see you at 4 a.m.
4 a.m.